Okay, so Iceotope, you have just completed a £30 million funding round. I guess the first question to ask is, what were you approached for that? Were you actively seeking it? How did it come about, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, so it was a strategic move by us. We set out to do that to fund growth and expansion, but we had a set of objectives in starting out. One was obviously to raise the money, but over and above that, what we wanted to do was make sure that we built a truly international syndicate that was led by impact funds, and also to bring a significant strategic into the party. So we achieved all of our objectives, and we were in danger of being quite oversubscribed as well for the round. So it was interesting keeping it just to 30 million. But that was our objectives, were to raise the money, really solid syndicate, and bringing a strategic in. So we ticked all the boxes.
Yeah, and in terms of that money, I mean, is it to just, I say just in inverted commas, carry out the day-to-day business until that you get to the size and stage where liquid cooling gets the tipping point and everyone gets into that, or is it to some planned expansion? I think you mentioned earlier, a truly international business. So, what are your plans for that funding?
Yeah, so good question. So for us, fortunately, being a more licensing focused business, we don't need to invest in factories and inventories and such like. So the cash for us is very much about is development capital for the business. So it allows us to do a set of things. One, to significantly increase our international footprint. So we will be extending and opening out offices in the United States and in ASEAN. It allows us to bring more people to bear to support customers, and it allows us to continue to invest in the development of new IP and the protection of IP as we go. So obviously some of it is working capital, but in the main it's development capital to allow us to grow and expand.
Okay, and in terms of the people subscribed to the funding round, you mentioned ABC Impact. So yeah, what's I guess why were they interested, and what do they bring to the party?
Yeah, great question. So ABC Impact led the round. So they are a Singapore-based impact fund. So their whole motivation is to invest in technologies which have a very strong ESG benefit and impact. They obviously have an ASEAN perspective on these things. So with countries like Singapore having had data center moratoria, with the need to expand over there, they found that not only our technology but our business model was very appropriate, because again, as a licensing business, this was something that Singapore could invest in, but it wasn't really about a kind of a foreign company exporting stuff to them, if you like, because we can deploy our technology in and with Singaporean businesses, and we can grow and expand in that area. So we fit as being a technology which was useful to the local economy and had a very strong impact in the ASEAN region in particular for ESG, but they are interested in that global impact, and that's at the top level of why they were interested. And then the next level being, they looked at all the liquid cooling types very extensively, and their view was that our technology, the vertical immersion in a rack format, the ability to retrofit, and the fact that we really do answer the questions of scale and serviceability, and also supply chain, were really, really strong factors. So they're just really excited about the fact that they believe we're the long-term technology to back. So those are all the different reasons, if you like, for them to be involved, and as I say, to lead the deal and allow other fairly significant investors also to join.
Yeah, and one of the other investment partners, a company called innovate. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, there's a certain technology synergy between you and them. So can you explain it? As you know, did you sort of say to them it'd be lovely to work with you, or did they other way around think, oh, we would like to get involved? How did their sort of investment come?
So it's a good question. So nVent is a strategic player for us. So nVent, global corporation owning brands like Schroff and Hoffman, and also under the nVent brand having their what they call the enclosures division. So nVent globally is a fast-growing business. It's over $3 billion in revenue, and the enclosures piece in particular, we've had a relationship with now for 3 or 4 years. We've partnered with them. We've done a lot of work in trade shows together, etc. So it's fair to say there was already we were already dating each other. So a marriage proposal, if you like, was a lot easier to navigate together. To be honest, I'm not sure who quite got down on bended knee. We were definitely having a conversation together at senior levels, and it quickly it became apparent we wanted a partner and they wanted to be a partner. So it was a really quick conversation in getting the guys in and on board to the investment, and then obviously working through all the diligence accordingly. So where nVent sit is in a highly complementary position to what we do. They are experts in things like heat exchangers, in CDUs, in racks and manifolds, etc. So all of those things that make up what we refer to as the TCS loop, the piece that we transfer the heat to, they are absolute experts in, but also they have significant manufacturing experience and capability. So that also brings access to 17 factories globally for us. So that when somebody, very commonly what we find is people will say, if we're going to deploy this technology in India, we would like it to be manufactured in India and integrated in India. Well, we can do that. We can do that in Taiwan and in China and so on and so on. So it gives us incredible reach and capability to have very fast, high quality manufacturing, scale products that we integrate well with. And you'll see more of that later this year. Shows like Supercompute and such like later in Dallas this year, we'll be showing off some fully integrated products. So some really exciting benefits that come.
Yeah, and then there's one other investment of interest. So SDCL, Energy Efficiency Income Trust. So yeah. What was their sort of interest, their angle?
So they're a British fund called Sustainable Development Capital. That's the SDCL stands for, and they're a FTSE 250 listed company, and they fundamentally provide finance into and developing sustainable projects. So amongst which are significant data center investments. So again, hugely excited by what our technology can do in and around the data center, how it can make it a much more effective, economical, and better ESG performing thing. So they invested both as an equity player, but they have also made available a further 100 million of completely non-dilutive and non-balance sheet damaging cash, which can be deployed by customers who want, for example, to use financing to help projects. So where easy monthly payments make it simpler than a capex heavy thing, which is very common in certain OPEX led businesses, then we have a partner where we can deploy effectively a funding package which helps the customer to be able to get access to that's already pre-approved, the technology is evaluated, etc., etc. So it can fly through in a fairly quick and simple manner. So we feel really happy with that investment there as well. And it would be fair to mention also the British Business Bank, so British Patient Capital, that's the UK government's impact arm, and also Northern Gritstone. So Northern Gritstone is a new fund. They closed 215 million earlier this year. and we'll close a further 285 million later this year. So we were their second investment. So that's a £500 million fund that's led. The chief investment officer there is former 3i, etc. So we've got real significant backers there, and they're all about investing in the north of England, and particularly in companies that have spun out from universities and got exciting technologies. So that whole group, we're all about, one, I think backing us as a really exciting British company that's making international waves, backing us as an exciting technology, and giving us real strength and depth through that investor group and through the quality of them to really assist us to scale.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, the momentum behind liquid cooling does seem to be increasing.
Yeah.
Is it still mainly around sort of the high performance compute area, or is it beginning to come mainstream? And I mean, I know we've had this fairly extreme weather in recent days, weeks. Is that even, if you had data centers ringing you up saying, we're overheating just in general, and what can you do? Yeah, well, what's the liquid cooling landscape look like, I guess?
Yeah, so there's a number of drivers going on, and I think to your point, so the primary driver just now is high performance. However, high performance is going mainstream. So it's a little bit of both, if you like, to your first point, which is, HPC was kind of the preserve of wacky professors in the corner of a university. As AI and various other technologies become increasingly the norm, what you're seeing is, banking and finance, retail, healthcare, etc. They're all starting to get very, very excited about the need for much, much higher throughput and scalable compute. And of course, the cloud giants as well. So liquid cooling is real. Liquid cooling is advancing fast, and we are seeing just really huge growth in inquiries, activities, customer traction, etc. It's absolutely coming there. But I think the next wave will be increasingly driven by ESG. People are increasingly becoming aware of the cost of the building. They haven't thought about that much in the past. Land's plentiful, they're cheap to build, but the carbon footprint per square meter of a data center takes a lot of recovering. And as people start to think about the scope 3 requirements of GHG, they'll get very interested in that, and that starts to require densification in and of itself. Obviously, energy prices are driving significant thinking about how wisely we use energy. And what people rarely recognize, but should, is in a lot of our air-cooled data centers today, we actually run our servers at 30 or 40% of their capacity to stop them overheating, to stop them failing. And that has a horrific impact on their energy efficiency. So very often you'll hear people talk about the PUE of the data center. More often than not, that's going to be measured in a peak condition. It's a bit like gas mileage in the car. You can get 52 to the gallon, honest, and then you're driving around at 35. And the reason for that is if we don't run them at peak, we actually use huge amounts of extra energy. So liquid cooling again helps us massively overcome that. We're able to, or types of liquid cooling, especially ours, we're able to run these computers much more efficiently. So I think combination of HPC becoming ubiquitous, and then people becoming much more aware of the carbon footprint, and organizations like iMasons and leading industries like financial services are starting to take net zero incredibly seriously. And as they really look at the holistic approach to things, they're getting suddenly realizing, my goodness, there's an enormous carbon footprint to this, which we can make a huge impact in. So that's what's driving the conversation there. And of course, without liquid cooling, it's impossible to cool the next generations of Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, etc. They have liquid cooling only SKUs coming down the pipeline. So it's here, and it's going to expand. But it won't be overnight. It won't be, it won't be some kind of like all air, all liquid. it's a hybrid world for a significant time, and that's why we've spent so much time making sure we can coexist in the hybrid world, and the customer doesn't have to have this all or nothing approach.
And in terms of the people that maybe are still reticent, I mean, are there any significant and common sort of objections you get? I mean, is it just purely a mindset? People still are nervous, the idea of liquid being around, you know, IT components, you know, there's electricity out there, what, you know, and all that. Retrofitting, I know you have a, you know, you can deal with that, but again, people think, well, how the hell do I get liquid into this data center and cool all my kit, etc. I mean, what sort of issues do you encounter, I guess?
Yeah, no, and again, a really good question. So, you know, the first thing I would say is that this is an industry where failure means catastrophe. You know, you do not want to be the data center manager of the bank that couldn't run the payroll on Friday of the last day of the month, sort of thing. So people are rightly incredibly risk averse. So the industry has to be able to answer all of these different points for them. And with any technology, you know, liquid cooling is single digit percentages of the market today. And I think it's legitimate that there are significant parts of the market that say we need the third gen, fourth gen, or whatever else of this to really scale out and to put into our billions of dollars of data centers and so on. So the things that do get people concerned is serviceability. How do I service this? You know, today, if a server goes down, I take it out, do what I want to do, I put it back in again. So, you know, if I have to shut water off, or if I have to use a crane to lift the thing out of a tank or whatever, how do I do that? And how does it not take more time? So we've answered that. I mean, we can actually provide better than air serviceability, reducing the number of intervals. But people need to very often measure that inside their own business. You know, I need to see it to believe it. So there's an element of people just having to get those things verified. But serviceability is always an issue. There's a very real concern around hydrophobia, as I refer to. You know, I have to run water through my data center. And that's where actually companies like nVent and others are doing great things, because there are other solutions for that heat transfer where you don't need to plumb water across your whole data center. So, for example, back to the retrofit piece, you may already have a data center with a hot aisle and cold aisle. What you could do is put several hundreds, thousands of kilowatts of liquid cooled compute and actually use in-row or in-rack heat exchangers. So you're running that equipment very, very efficiently, and the heat would be going to the hot aisle. So you're using your existing investment. You're allowing yourself to move into a much more efficient pattern with the liquid cooled stuff, but either using rear door heat exchangers or in-row heat exchangers, what you're able to do is really massively minimize any kind of run where liquid is happening. You're very much at the level of the row, and you know, you can be dealing in a couple of feet of pipe, which, you know, frankly, you can make it out of an unobtainium at that point in time to make it as bomb-proof, leak-proof as you could want. So there are very good solutions for the hydrophobic, which work great for co-location and so on and so on, to be able to do those things. So I think those have tended to be the big concerns. Ultimately, also, it's you know, the IT vendors and various others, their ability increasingly to be able to answer questions around support, integration, warranty, all of those things have become, you know, significantly enhanced. And they're always the areas that get customers. It's rarely about the technology. It's always about what happens if, and how does it fit in my world. And I think we've answered increasingly those questions for people. We've got enhanced serviceability, we've got warranty, integration, etc. taped. We've got scalability worldwide. We you know, I think for us as well, you know, our ability to scale without harming your supply chain is a really strong USP. That plays significantly for people who are very vertically integrated, that we can license technology and they can continue to run their supply chain and their integration models and so on. Because some of these other technologies become very disruptive to that approach. If you buy fully populated racks of equipment today, which are dropped in row, if the technology is not rack based or whatever, how do what do you do? So we allow all of those models to remain unchanged. So, what we're trying to get to is that the customer's got not a harder decision to have than it's liquid, it's liquid, So being able to limit that to the choice and then to be able to say, oh, thank goodness, it's easier to service, it services less often because it breaks less often, I have better performance. So they're the concerns, and I think business is rightly being evidence-led. They're just waiting on those larger volumes of data coming out from the earlier adopting users. And I think that's why in 2 or 3 years' time, you'll actually see an astonishing avalanche of uptake as just more and more of the it's safe, it works, and we can do it type data become prevalent and more obvious.
Yeah, and earlier you did say that you thought it would be a hybrid world for quite some time, which is refreshingly honest, because I mean, whether it's cloud or workplace, the cloud guys all said everyone's going to go to the cloud and on-prem's dead, and then we all worked out that some kind of hybrid model, and hybrid working, we all left the offices and we're going to work from home. So hybrid seems to be the flavor, and as I say, you haven't tried to tell everyone that we're all going to liquid cooling, end of story. But what do you anticipate over time? You say there will be an avalanche. I mean, do you think there will, for a foreseeable future, be this coexistence of the two for various reasons, whether it's financial, operational, or can you anticipate a time when the benefits of liquid cooling and reusing the waste heat, etc., become very compelling, so that you do make air-based cooling unattractive, if you like? Yeah,
so it's going to be a question of time towards that. So could there be a future where everything's 100% either passively or liquid cooled? Yes. But data centers are kind of like big Californian redwoods. They'll take a long time to fall over, if you like. So people who are building air-cooled data centers today will want generations of IT to run through them, etc. And they will have life and longevity to them. But I think that the question marks around the viability of them will become more apparent the closer we go to 2030. And the reason I say that is there's so much effort around net zero. Now, as people actually start to do the more holistic work, so if we were just staying outside of net zero and we were just thinking about the sheer economics of cooling this computer versus this computer, etc., I think we would take 20 years or so to do the whole shift to liquid. Now, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be, by 2025, 26, I could see as being 20-30% liquid. And increasingly as performance gains and increases, it takes a larger share. So I can see it being in those kind of levels. But as people really start to think net zero and think about the cost of that carbon footprint of the data center and the carbon footprint of the server and so on, as you start to really bring together that holistic picture, I think that will be a huge accelerator. And as more smart city technology develops, where we really do get genuinely very good at heat reuse, those things will drive significant adoption. But they do take time. Municipal projects are not next year, they're 5-year and 10-year kind of things. So overall, I think the predominantly liquid transition would be, you would see the strong signs of it in 5 years' time, where it would probably be not unreasonable to start betting on it. I think the 5 to 10 years time, you'll see a very strong acceleration. Whether it will ever be entirely liquid, who knows? And in 10 years time, you know, I'll have long since got my government bus pass. Somebody else will probably have come up with a better idea again. That you know, there may well be some other technologies in 15, 20 years time, etc. But for now, I think the future tends towards liquid, tends towards more value. But it's going to take some other, you know, bigger pictures to break through. The industry, people need to think more holistically. They need to think much more holistically about the whole image. If too much of it's down looking at the chip or whatever else, and there's too many moving components to this. And when you start to think about the whole cost of the data center and of the cooling and of not using the servers efficiently and the carbon footprint of the servers, and so when you take all of that together, you'll accelerate massively the shift towards liquid. But you know, but it's that's why it'll take time and analysis and, you know, proper thinking and strategy, which is why it's the 5 to 10 year period where I think it becomes, you know, more dominant, if you like.
Yeah, and to that point, do you think, I mean, at the moment, for example, there seems to be a trend, whether it's just coincident or not, that people are opening more and more, building more data centers in the Nordics, for example, which has obvious attractions. That's one angle. We still seem to be pretty much as it flap centric, and you add Dublin, you know, everyone still seems to be obsessed with opening them in, you know, huge, great capital cities. That might be beginning to change. I suppose what I'm asking is, do you see the signs of this radical thinking required to re-engineer the industry over a period of time, or because of the people involved, do you think there's still a bit too much traditional thinking about where to build a data center, how to build it, and therefore we're still perhaps a little bit frustrated by the progress required?
Yeah, so I guess like any industry, there's always a big chunk of it that's just in cookie cutter mode, right? There'll be people who've got a spreadsheet that says, you know, press this button here, get 2 of these back. And a huge amount of the data center industry is operated like that. People fund it, people build it, and there'll be an element of not getting fired for designing a data center the same as the last one. So there's a chunk of the industry that will be in that place, and that will be a significant chunk today, which will become a dwindling number over time, because that's the nature of us as human beings. But there is no doubt that people are taking it seriously. And to your point about in cities, absolutely, we're going to be driving data closer to us. And what do we need to do there? Well, we need to be able to go high. So we need to be able to have technologies that can deploy in multiple floors. So they can't be too heavy. They can't be this, that, and the other. Space is going to become a big factor in those. So the city stuff, space, proximity, silence, you know, protection from the environment, because they're not in a nicely, you know, managed data center with lots of security, etc. So you're going to have to think about those things. And again, our technology lives beautifully in those areas. And then, you know, the other key point is that, yes, you can, you know, open data centers in the Nordics, etc., but there's only so many you can put there, right? There's a limit to the amount of power and fiber you could get there, for one thing. But even the North Pole, it will struggle to cool, you know, 300, 400, 500, 600 watt chips in any kind of efficient way. And what's actually happening, and sorry to get down into the technical weeds, but a lot of cooling has been focused on the processors. And actually, when we talk about these 300 watt processors, etc., we can cool them with air. We can, but we can't cool the RAM. The RAM's getting hotter. The PCI cards are getting hotter, and so on. So those solutions are really struggling because everything's getting hotter. And that's why you need that more holistic view, because if you just think about the one thing, or just the chip, or we can cool that in air, what we'll also do is run them very inefficiently and will destroy our PUE calculations. So I think, notwithstanding, you know, the Nordics for free air cooling, etc., is still a very viable choice. It doesn't remain that way, you know, for the entirety. But bearing in mind also, as we say, this hybrid world, hybrid compute, you know, we we do everything from email servers to, you know, stuff that's driving AI for smart vehicles and things. You know, email servers don't need liquid cooled today, etc. So if you can do much more efficient things with them, then you should. And that's why people will deploy different loads in different places using different technologies for the foreseeable future. And they're perfectly right and sensible to do that.
Okay, and maybe in sort of wrapping up, back to Iceotope yourselves, you've got this funding, you explained a little bit about, but what can we expect? I mean, will we see some new technology solutions coming from you, or are you reasonably happy that what you've got there now is waiting for people to, you know, to sort of switch on to it and start adopting it? And you mentioned, you know, expanding as well, I think. So just, yeah, what might we see from yourselves over the next 6-12 months?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an exciting time. So in terms of expansion, you will see us open offices in the United States, and that's not just offices, that's labs, technical teams, etc., to get us closer to customers and able to work with them there. You'll see us doing the same in ASEAN. So that helps us inevitably to scale up and scale out. On the product front, we have no laurels upon which to rest. So we have a very, very extensive and strong IP estate. We have some very significant pieces of IP which we've not shown to much of the world yet, but certain key customers are driving very interesting projects with just now. So later this year, some of those will become more apparent. There will be presentations or white papers coming at OCP and other you know, events at which we do some show and tell. I'm not going any further than that just now, but we have some really, really interesting, wholly unique applications which are coming, which we will scale up and scale out and give us incredible advantage through our technology solutions and through the business model that we apply. So we're super, super excited about it, and the sheer scale and pace at which, you know, conversations are developing are just it's breathtaking. We can barely get time to rest at all just now, and that's a fabulous problem to have. So lots more. Definitely watch this space on lots of exciting new products which are delivering significant interest and value with, you know, pilot customers. And as I say, closer to customers and more expansion into those spaces. So it's going to be fun.
I suppose it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, David. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much indeed.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute treat, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great one.
Will do. Thanks.
Thank you.